Hello and good morning. It's Brenda Meller bringing you for a live edition of Social Media Pie. This is where I bring on inspiring people to inform and educate you. And I am delighted. This is a long day coming, Liam. I'm so excited to have the chance to chat with you today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Brenda. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this as well.
Good. What's going to be fun. So Liam Darmody, I'm going to point the right way here. Liam Darmody, I'm with you. And if you've been watching me for a while, if you've been watching my live series, I actually had Liam scheduled with me, I think, January. Was it January this year or last year? I don't know. Like the years are blending
Probably
together.
last year, yeah.
Okay. And we were planning on doing it. And then I think a couple weeks beforehand, I think some things were happening with your job. You're changing jobs or something was happening. And you're like, we need to reschedule. And I said, no problem. But even the backstory behind that, Liam and I have been connected for a while on LinkedIn. And I invited him on the show. And then we had to kind of postpone that. And then this whole Clubhouse thing happened. And I was like really late to the game. I went onto Clubhouse and Liam was already like a superstar celebrity on there, and I learned a lot from you on that platform, and I'm really just delighted to connect the dots finally and have the chance to chat with you here today, Liam. So
likewise.
Yeah, delighted to have you on. And I see we've already got some comments, and I've reminded you guys, please comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from, whether you're watching this in live or in replay. That way we know the stream is working. I see Bill was like very prompt this morning. He jumped on right away when the stream started.
Ready to go.
Yeah, and then we've got some other folks that we both know. I think you know Kenneth Lang, don't you?
You sure do.
Yeah, very good. Morning, Kenneth. Thanks for watching.
Hi, Ariel. Hi, Nancy.
Nancy's on. There's Ariel in the house. So all kinds of awesome people watching. Thank you guys so much for joining in and the conversation. So here's what I know about Liam. When I first started kind of following you, it's almost like toddlers and parallel play. You kind of like interact around people, but not directly with them. And I remember one day you were on a live video. Anytime I see a live, I always jump on it for a minute if I can, and I'll say, hey, from Metro Detroit. And Liam was in the middle and there was two persons on either side of him. And it was almost like watching a tennis match. And I was like, is Liam's microphone working? Because the guys were like volleying back and forth. And you weren't being asked to speak, and it was like the conversation kept kind of flowing back and forth. So that was one of my first, I was like, why didn't they give Liam the chance to speak during the call? But, since then I've seen you, like I said, on Clubhouse, and you've really done a great job of embracing the stage and being a great host and all those other good things. So that's a little bit of what I know about you. And obviously you're rocking on LinkedIn. So that's what I know about you, Liam. Why don't you tell us a bit about you and what you do now, and then we'll get into this conversation today.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Again, really excited for this to be finally happening. I have been a huge Brenda Meller fan for a long time. Obviously, I looked up, actually, before coming on here today, I looked up when we first connected. It was like October 23rd, 2019. And I remember seeing your LinkedIn Rockstars list and thinking,
that's right. Okay.
Holy smokes. Like, it's so cool that there's somebody in the LinkedIn community that spends the time to aggregate all that information, because anybody who posts on LinkedIn regularly knows that it'd be nice to have more insight into that kind of stuff on data and metrics, which is something that I focus on specifically. Then I was like, maybe one day, I can be on that list, and maybe one day I can talk to Brenda, and maybe she'll accept my connection request. And like this was back when I didn't feel confident on the LinkedIn platform at all. I didn't really know much about it. I was just sort of flirting with the idea of starting to post content here. So been following you for a long time. I have sort of had like an interesting career. I started in recruiting when I got out of college. I was heavily involved in recruiting when I was in college. So sort of transitioned into that when I got out of college. And then I started working at startups, and hiring freezes would come and they would say, okay, well, we need somebody that can just go and take care of stuff. And that was me. I was kind of the janitor, for lack of a better word. And they would just throw me to problem, and I'd clean it up, and then I would fix another one and kind of develop a reputation as a problem fixer for startup companies in the technology space, and wound up getting a few opportunities as a result of that over the course of my career. And I ended up sort of doing customer success, marketing operations, sales operations, typically all around the revenue operations model. And then most recently, I just took a job at WillowTree, which is a digital product agency that works with the Fortune 500 to build some fantastic applications. We work with the most innovative companies developing applications that hundreds of millions of people use. So I am back in the recruiting saddles, so to speak. I'm the director of talent attraction and employer branding here. And that is sort of a hybrid between sourcing in a traditional model, but also marketing, right? So we are planning to grow pretty significantly over the next couple of years, and we need to start really bringing in talent. We only hire about 1% of the talent that applies to the company, so we're going to try and really start going on the offensive and bringing folks into the fold and making sure that they're familiar with who our brand is and how amazing it is to work here, because it really is. So I'm actually here right now.
That's awesome. Well, I love hearing the story and how all the dots kind of start to connect, in terms of your background and your networking and, having different experiences from the product side, the recruiting side, and how it all kind of comes full circle. And you moved, didn't you, for this job? You moved out of the area into a different geographic?
I actually was moving already. And 2 weeks prior to moving, Willow Tree had reached out to me with an opportunity, and it was too hard to pass up. And it just so happened that they had these beautiful offices in Durham, North Carolina, and that's only 20 minutes from my new house. So I was like, well, that's great. So there's about 200 people here. The office is largely empty right now, but once we get back here, there will be a lot of folks in the building, and it's a pretty hopping place.
Wonderful. Wow. So that's great. So you've been there now for, it was the summer, wasn't it? July or so?
Yeah, July. I started July, just before July. So about 5 months now. It's been great.
Awesome. So you're all settled in. So let's get into this conversation. We're here today, you guys. See, the topic is right above us. We're going to be talking about PACE on LinkedIn, PACE. And I already had somebody reach out to me that said, what does PACE mean? Is that an acronym, or is it, is it talking about the pace of things, or what? So Liam, what does PACE mean to you?
So PACE equals success is kind of the formula that I stumbled into on LinkedIn over the course of my journey creating content here. I can't actually take full credit for it. There is a gentleman named Jeff Ignacio, who is a revenue operations specialist on the West Coast, and he's somebody that I knew very well. I actually initially had spelled it out alphabetically, ACEP equals success, and he, being a revenue operations person and sales enablement person, was like, dude, why don't you rearrange the numbers and make it PACE equals success? And then you can say it's like it takes gradual time to get to success. But yes, it does stand for something. It's patience, authenticity, consistency, and engagement equals success.
I got to write that down again. You're going to have to say that again for me slow.
Patience, authenticity, consistency. And it's been a toss-up for me between engagement and empathy, but I figure out that empathy kind of comes with authenticity. But in terms of LinkedIn utilization, engagement is so important, right? Engaging with other people's content, engaging with people who engage with your content. So I opted for engagement, even though personally, my personal philosophy would probably be to include empathy. I think
I'm going to put both of them on there, because we'll probably talk about both of them here today.
They're interchangeable.
There's probably some people watching that are like, like for me, if I knew you today, I wouldn't know. I mean, I don't even know the backstory that you were describing, because to me, you were always a very engaging person. It was never like, I think when we first started interviewing, I'm like, I tagged you for the Rockstar list, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's great. I'm like, of course you're on the you're a rock star. Like for me, you've always been that outgoing person, genuine, all the things that you talk about here. Even I think back to that interview, you were patient. You weren't like jumping in and trying to like steamroll over the other people. You were like, well, I'll wait for my turn to talk.
Right.
Authenticity, consistency. I mean, I always see you doing all of those things on the network. Are these things that you've learned over time, or, just categorized?
Yeah, I think, I started actively creating content here in the beginning of 2020. So, I've been on LinkedIn since 2004. I used it to recruit when I got my first job out of college. And have always been a fan of the platform, but always was sort of confused around the idea of like, join the conversation. Like, what do you mean join the conversation? What conversation, right? Because it was just, to me, it was people just sharing, HBR articles or things that they wanted to use to promote their company, which is great. That's certainly a fantastic use of LinkedIn. But I quickly learned, as I started to sort of delve into it, that the community is really nurturing and sort of embraces people's authenticity and vulnerability and willingness to get out there and sort of talk about whatever's on their mind and who they are in a genuine way. And so I started posting on a regular basis, and it was very slow, right? I mean, it's a common thing. A lot of people sort of get frustrated because there's no immediate gratification, and it's easy because people think, Rome wasn't built in a day. You have to remember that, right? And so if your objectives are to grow a following, make sure that you're not just doing it for the wrong reasons, right? You don't just want to build a massive following. You want to actually for me, it's like finding who you are. And that's what I think has sort of happened in the last 2 years for me, is I've been able to let go of the fact that I was nervous about posting on LinkedIn and like, oh, well, what if somebody that I've worked with doesn't like it or sees it and doesn't like it? And there's this like stigma around posting on LinkedIn that people struggle to get around. And I think a lot of that is largely due to the fact that LinkedIn was, in its original form, a place to store contacts that you already know on online, right? Before people were already online. So
Right.
what does that evolve into? And I think we're sort of starting to see what that evolves into is we're basically becoming the world's largest networking event, right? LinkedIn is a massive place to meet people and get to know folks for what they're about and, things that you have in common. So I literally equate it to a networking event. You just go and meet people and you learn about who they are and what they are. And if you want to have a deeper conversation, you take it out of the networking event and do something else, So I was having a blast. I posted last week I was looking through my text messages, and about 50% of the people I text with on a daily basis are people that I've maybe never met before, but know very well through LinkedIn. And so I've made friends here. I've made partnerships here. I've gotten a job through my activity on LinkedIn. It's been amazing.
That's awesome. So let me go back to, I have a couple points I want to ask in there. Would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert? I think I know the answer to this one.
I'm definitely an extrovert.
See, that surprises me. I was thinking introvert.
Really?
Yeah, because of the so I think sometimes too when people are like, I'm nervous about what to post on LinkedIn or I'm nervous about getting into conversations, sometimes it's like that that hurdle of interacting with other people, because I'm like that. I remember back in the day too, feeling the same way. Like, I don't know what I want, because I don't want to look like a fool. I don't want to look like an idiot, posting these things, posting the wrong things or starting the wrong conversations. And it's almost like when you go to an in-person networking event. So tell me this, Liam, when you go to an in-person networking event, I don't know if you're networking again yet, but when you walk into the room, are you nervous or are you engaged like right away? What feeling hits you when you walk into that big event?
That's a great question. I would say there's always a little bit of nervous, right? Because you're meeting people for the first time. And I think even the most extroverted of folks, there might be a little bit of that. But as soon as I have that first conversation, I shake somebody's hand and realize they're here to network too. Like, there's nothing to be intimidated about. Just extend your hand and introduce yourself. It's not very hard. And that, it's harder for some people than others. But for me, once I have that first conversation, then I'm off to the races. And honestly, like, LinkedIn's a little bit the same way if you apply that principle, right? You create your first post and you see what happens, and you create your second post and you keep going and you keep going, and things start growing as long as you're dedicated to it and you're being who you are.
There you go. So advice for people that are watching that are kind of like hesitant about posting at all. Maybe they haven't ever posted. Maybe it's been 6 months, 2 years, and it's kind of like that overwhelming feeling of getting, and to your point, what if I post and it doesn't get engagement? What's your advice to those people? Because I know some of them are watching right now.
Yeah. I mean, I learned a couple years ago to always ask what's the worst that can happen when I'm starting to doubt something or I'm deciding whether or not to make a leap. And you think about it, like, LinkedIn is a vast network, and their algorithm is actually interesting in that it sort of only distributes your content to a certain percentage of your audience to test out sort of the engagement levels. So even if you were to post something and it flopped completely, there aren't that many people that are necessarily seeing it, right? So like, that's okay. You have this like testing ground a little bit. There's a little bit of a buffer. But also I think the biggest thing that I say is, look, like, are you posting for other people or are you posting for yourself? Are you posting to show who you are, how you think, what you're passionate about? Or are you posting because you want to put on an air of some sort, or because you think people want to see this coming from you? And I think it depends what people's purposes are. But for me, the value that I've derived from the last 2 years of investing and putting myself out there on the platform is that I've really sort of learned to let go of caring too much about that piece and focusing more on just like, I have this thought, I'm going to put it out there. And I think to myself, with people that are new, I'm like, if you're going to start posting on the platform, think about what you want to post and think, will 50% of the people that read this be offended by it? And if the answer is no, then just go for it. Like, if it's not offensive content, like, what's the big deal? And, I think a lot of people just get hung up on thinking about what the people that are currently in their network will think of their content, as opposed to the potential doors it could open up from people that they don't yet know looking at their content. And that's the biggest sort of mental hurdle for me, was getting to that stage. And now it's like second nature.
So how did you get there? I mean, was it just trial and error? Was it people helping to give you advice, or was it seeing the engagement? What was it that prompted it to kind of change and shift for you?
It's interesting. Actually, 4 or 5 years ago, I was going through some difficult times professionally. Like I was on like the end of a 6-year streak at a very big startup that went from a very small startup to a big startup. And I was, it was not the outcome that I was hoping for. And so I was a little bit lost. I didn't know where I wanted to go. And I posted some articles back then and shared that vulnerability and shared sort of some of the lessons that I learned from some of the mistakes that I had made. And the response was overwhelming. People were like, "Oh, I've totally thought of this. I've totally had imposter syndrome. I completely resonate. This completely resonates with me." And I was thinking to myself, like, wow, like there's an appetite for this type of content on LinkedIn. And then I ignored it for 3 years because I still didn't feel comfortable putting it out there. And then I started seeing more people doing it and started following people like yourself, like Andy, like Joel, numbers go on. And thinking, I have these types of thoughts. I can write this way. I can post about things like this. And so I just started doing it. And that resulted in me sort of every day coming back and trying to post things. And it's funny because now I'll sometimes look back at the post that I did 2 years ago and I'm like, ugh, it's like cringeworthy for me. But I was trying to figure it out, and I was learning. Right at the time, you had all the broetry stuff and like there's so many different things going on the platform that I didn't know about.
Back that up for a second. Broetry. I know what it is, but some people are probably like, "What? What do you say? What's broetry?" I know Is it Andy who's not a big fan of it? Somebody's posted about it. I think it's Andy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of content creators in general would say if the quality of your content is valuable and your audience likes you and is engaged, then you're not going to have to worry about the format. But a few years back, one of the ways to get additional traction on the LinkedIn platform through the algorithm was to basically have people click the see more button on your posts and make sure that they were sort of dwelling for a long time. Yeah. And so some enterprising folks figured, well, if we just put 3 words on each line and then put like 700 lines, then the LinkedIn algorithm will think that everybody is really loving our content and hanging out for every word. And so they tried to game the system that way. And I think it might have worked. I don't know. I wasn't posting often enough back then, but that's broetry. So it's just one single line space, one single line space, one single line space, one single line space.
So I always kind of thought it was both the combination of the cadence of things. It was like telling a story that would be like short lines, long lines, and then they go, they would kind of take you on a path like poetry does sometimes. And that combined with a long post, but it almost sounds like it's more technical. The technique is more like dropping things and making 700 lines to your point than the other.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never really focused too much on it, but some of my early posts did because I was noticing other people that were getting a lot of engagement. That's what they were doing, right? So I was like, well, there's got to be something here. And I think that's the other thing that I always encourage people to do is don't expect that you're just going to know how to create content all the time if you've never done it before. Watch people who do it on a regular basis. Watch people that catch your interest on the platform and observe them. Like, what are they doing? How are they posting? There are tons of people that you can follow on the platform that have had massive success building engaged audiences, better than me for sure. And like they are open about how you do that. And if you follow those people and you learn from them, then you can do it yourself. It's not that difficult.
That's a really good point. And I think, sometimes you can just kind of pop into the homepage feed and see what's catching your eye and what's capturing your attention there. You don't have to really search for it, because sometimes it's like, well, how do you find an influencer? How do you find somebody? Well, they're there. It's just, it's simply insight and doing a little bit of engagement, right?
Yep. 100%. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that you also want to be engaged on the platform. Like, even if you're not posting content yourself, but you see content that is in your feed that people are engaging with and it resonates with you, like throw a like on it. Throw a reaction of some sort, comment on it, leave an insightful comment, right? That others can see, because every single action you take on the LinkedIn platform is kind of like a micro ad for your personal brand or the brands that you represent, right? So don't just throw out like this is awesome. I mean, I'd say this is awesome all the time because it's like one of my favorite phrases, but but I'm
gonna do a shameless, because sometimes I like break script in my videos and I like talk to the camera. I want everyone right now to go into the comments right now and drop "this is awesome." Let's see. I don't mind. I mean, even in a live video, I think a lot of times they'll just sit back and watch it and not really. It's almost like listening to a podcast. But there's a whole party happening in the comments right now, Liam. It's like jumping, and people are having conversations. So when you jump into that conversation, even in a live feed, it counts. It's the same way as a post, doesn't it? I mean, it's not that different, is it?
No. And I think the other thing is that you start to then, it's like a flywheel effect, because you're name is associated to other people who have a lot of engagement and a lot of following and an audience that's very connected to them, right? So you start to then benefit from like a flywheel effect of, you being associated with other people that have large followings, and then they end up going back and forth, and you start to, it's literally like you end up in the comment section of somebody's post, and it's like, oh yeah, you're here. It's like, where everybody knows your name kind of thing.
Right. Cheers. It's like Cheers all over again. I passed by a bar. I was up in northern area of Michigan, Macomb County, but there was a bar. It's called Almost Cheers. And like their subtitle was "Where almost everybody knows your name."
Perfect. That's great. That's great. I love that.
That's kind of awesome. Like getting into these conversations on and you start to become familiar. And I think for me and you, going back to that parallel play concept that, toddlers, they don't play with each other, but they kind of sit next to each other. They watch each other. It's the same thing. I think a lot of times on LinkedIn, there's like this parallel play and you're kind of watching, observing, and then eventually something resonates with you and you comment back to that person and then you start to engage and then you connect with them. But trust is being built up. Yep. So let me go to the point of authenticity. That was something that you had as part of your acronym: patience, authenticity, consistency, and empathy or engagement. Authenticity. I mean, there's work Brenda, and then there's just Brenda, right? Like, I mean, is there two personalities you have when you're interacting in LinkedIn, or help us with that? What do you think?
For me, not really. For me, I think there's obviously like LinkedIn and work Liam and like home Liam, but they aren't vastly different, right? Like I'll post pictures of me dancing in a superhero cape with my kids because that's who I am and that's what I'm about. I think for me, people talk a lot about authenticity being kind of a cliche word, and I never fully understood that. And I don't know if it's because I never really paid super close attention to a lot of other social platforms where authenticity was thrown around a lot, but then ended up being inauthentic. I don't know. But for me, authenticity is one of the most important things a human being can be, because you are who you are. What you see is what you get, right? And so, people that are a little bit nervous, and it obviously depends on your industry about how much you want to show about your personality on online on a platform. But in general, the idea is if, people that know me from prior jobs will say certain things about my personality and who I am. And I want that to ring true with people that I'm currently working with and people that I might work with in the future. And so the best way to sort of marry all those three things together is just to be who I am all the time. So I use less profanity when I'm on LinkedIn platform than I may use elsewhere. I try to be as, focused on...
I noticed you said less. You didn't say no profanity.
Yeah, I use less. Yes, certainly less when it's recorded. But yeah, I mean, I typically will just try and be real in any capacity that I'm in. And that's never really steered me wrong in the last couple of years.
Yeah, great advice. And I know there's people watching that are kind of feeling inspired by this, and it's still may feel daunting for some people when they look at, I'm just going to say, they look at someone like you, Liam, and I'm looking at your profile right now. You're just under 27,000 followers, and they look at that and they're like, oh my gosh, wow, this guy's got 27,000 followers on LinkedIn. And they may be, a person who's got like 1,100 connections or 1,100 followers right now. So how did you build that up? Did you focus on trying to build up a follower, or did you not really pay attention to the numbers and just focus on the content? I mean, what's your advice there?
In the beginning, it was really more about focusing on other people and learning what they were doing, right? So trying to get a sense for how frequently were people that I was following who were growing, posting. What were they posting about? How were they posting? What actions were they taking? They were in the comments section replying to people all the time. The conversations that look like the comment sections that look like they're actual conversations are my favorite, right? It's not just like a bunch of random people just throwing words onto a post. It's people talking with each other about the topic that is posted, right? And so I think, I would just kind of take it step by step and sort of spend a lot of time observing. Even now, I'm not actually, you and I had confirmed having this conversation months ago, right? So your content is so far planned out. It's great. It's amazing. I'm super impressed by it. You're so organized. I will literally sometimes wake up in the morning and I have no idea if I'm going to post something on LinkedIn that day.
Yeah.
And then I will spend some time in the comment section and looking at friends' posts, and usually something will materialize, and I'll just post about it and see what happens. And sometimes it tanks and sometimes it flies. And either way, it's just something I was thinking about putting out there. And so I think the net is that it can't hurt, right?
Yeah, and I want to pull up this phrase again: patience, authenticity, consistency. I think that's what you're referring to there. And I want to let you in on something, Liam, too. I mean, right now I'm running a series, 50 Tips in 50 Days, and I'm kind of skipping days here and there a little bit. Like I posted on Friday, and I did something different on Saturday. I skipped yesterday entirely. But aside from that series that I'm running, I understand the mechanics of content strategy and content planning and content calendars. But I think you and I are both, you're at a certain point in your career where, within your career journey, where you know what resonates on LinkedIn, and you know who your audience is that you're speaking to, and you also know sometimes you can't artificially create 30 days of that in advance. It's like what's happening today.
Right.
What struck me in a conversation with someone today, or where's my headspace at? So I'm not all that well planned out. The only planning I do is that I plan to post. I don't sit down, aside from this 50 tips series. I have not done a 30-day content calendar on my own. I do it on my pages and things like that. But so I don't know if that helps you feel better, because like you're doing exactly what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think, look, I think everyone does things their own way and differently. And I think, that's something that is what makes this platform amazing as well, is that it's not just a bunch of people that have like the same cookie cutter mentality and approach to things. It's people just doing things that make sense for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that we can kind of like bounce ideas off of each other, and we learn from each other. The conversations, like you said, the conversations I think are really key. And that gets us to the E. We're talking here about empathy and engagement. And I want to ask you one question, and then we're going to start to get the audience in the conversation as well. So can you give us some tips on creating engagement? I know a lot of times I see LinkedIn, I'll see people posting on LinkedIn and just flat, like there's no engagement. There's like a couple, pity likes, like people that know them work with them, but there's nothing really else that's happening. What's your advice there on how to generate authentic engagement on your posts?
So I think knowing the right time to post for your audience is important. There's no universal right time to post. There are certainly studies out there that suggest that 8 to 10 in the morning is probably the most engaged. That's certainly been my experience with my audience, but it all depends on where your primary audience is located. So that would be typically one thing. I think I would invest in putting content out that seems to be doing well on the platform. For me, text posts are always generally top performers, and it also it's kind of the easiest way to get into posting on a regular basis. It's intimidating to this day for me to be on a video, live or otherwise. Like I feel really comfortable because I'm in the hands of a pro here, but like for me, it's not natural. It feels weird to sort of like look into a camera and talk. And so I still tend to default to posting text posts. And sometimes people get confused about like, well, why, you have to just kind of understand and talk to people who understand the LinkedIn platform, because there's a lot of tips that we can give out. So text posts are a big one. Polls, everybody's talking about polls right now. They're saying polls are just everywhere.
They still get so much engagement. I mean, they blow. It's like I post, I come back, I'm like, oh my gosh, really? It got that? Like it, why did it get that much? But it seems like the LinkedIn algorithm, people are rewarding those polls right now, aren't they?
Yeah, I would say that I think I've long said, and I don't know if you remember, but like I've used to post polls every Saturday morning. And
yes, that's right.
Like these sliders or carousels that would show the comments that people left on it, and I ended up running out of time, but to do that every week. But I love polls because it's one of the fastest ways that you can get significant quantifiable data from your audience, right? You can see who voted how, and you can create polls that will get people's mind sort of spinning a little bit and thinking, oh, well, how would I respond to that? And if you can get people to talk and leave a comment, a lot of conversation. There's also obviously people that are jumping on that bandwagon just to be like, what did you have for breakfast this morning? That's the common negative quip. And like I get that. Like, are you doing that because you actually like, is that authentically something that you actually care about? Do you actually care about how people are consuming breakfast, or are you just trying to game the system? And I think at the end of the day, if you put posts out that are authentically you and things that you're passionate about and curious about, you will get people that will do the same. The other thing I'll say is make sure that you're leveraging hashtags, 3 to 5 hashtags on your posts.
Okay.
There are some fantastic resources out there. Andy Foot's LinkedInsights.com is a great place. That's where I actually discovered the hashtag list that I have bookmarked on my computer now. Okay. And I reference it still to this day, because they work. If I post a post about, Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, I always include hashtags that are related to that. And I end up seeing people from a different audience, a lot of secondary connections looking at my content. And that's how you can sort of start to expand your thought leadership into different areas. I guess my quickest tips would be just focus. Don't overthink it, right? Yeah. If you wake up and you think about something that you want to post, find a way to word it and make it not necessarily like overwhelming for yourself. Just do something short and simple and sweet, put it out there, and try doing that a couple times a week. And then everybody that comments, comment back. Comment on their content, right? If they comment on yours, let's take a look at their content. If they posted something, can you lend them a little bit of sway with your audience, sort of by leaving a comment, etc. And then it's all karma, and it just takes care of itself. Then
I love it. I'm huge on karma. I think you know that. I'm like huge on social media karma. That effect of, for me, things started to really change for me when I stopped focusing on myself and I started focusing on other people. Yep. And I love that effect of getting into the engagement part, and I love the point too that you made. People comment on your post, go onto their posts and leave a comment. And I'm always like, when people do that, and I know they do it to me too. They'll comment on, or I'll comment on something of theirs, and they'll come over on one of my posts and they'll comment. I'm like, oh, that was really nice. So that it just makes you feel like it's genuine, it's authentic. Going to your earlier point, and they understand how this whole karma thing works. You help me, I help you, and it helps both of us to do better on the platform, right?
Absolutely, totally.
So I want to jump into the audience conversation because we've had this chat that's just been blowing up. It's like a whole party going on in the background over there. And I've tried not, in StreamYard, there's like comments on the side, and I've tried, it's like, it was like 38 at one point, and then I clicked and it cleared out, and it's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. And we had a whole awesome party for a while when I said, everybody drop in a comment and say, this is awesome. But folks are saying they love the formula PACE. It does a great job of helping to explain, what you mean by being successful on LinkedIn. It's focusing on PACE: patience, authenticity, consistency, and empathy/engagement. So they're really liking that comment there.
Let's figure out a way to incorporate that hash into the name.
Right. There you go. Yeah. Let's see here. I want to see if you guys have questions or comments. I'm scrolling through. There's like a ton of information in here. Ariel is out on here. I want to say thank you so much for joining us today, Ariel. Let's see here. Whoa, it's just so much going on in here. Coffee? Are you a coffee or a tea drinker? We were talking about what you have for breakfast earlier. People are talking about coffee and tea in the chat right now.
I'm a coffee drinker. We got an Nespresso. My wife and I got a Nespresso machine for our wedding, and it's easily the most used thing that we got from the wedding.
Do you do lattes and stuff, or just the espressos?
I usually just drink them black, but we have the attachment that does the frothy milk thing, and sometimes on a weekend we'll do some cappuccinos or something. But usually it's just, our kids are 4 and 2. We just need caffeine.
Oh, you have to. You're like hooked up. So party at Liam's house over the coffee machine. Clarion, hey Clarion, thanks for watching. She's commenting that Ryan Roslansky, who I believe is the CEO of LinkedIn, if I'm not mistaken. Has talked about the LinkedIn algorithm favoring dwell time, to your point, people sitting on posts longer, and broetry being frowned on. I have to imagine that, Liam, there's some type of formula that they use to kind of scan. It's probably like an AI thing where they kind of scan and look at those things. Right. What do you think there? Do you think they have something programmed in?
Probably. I've read multiple articles from multiple folks about how there's tons of different algorithms. There's no one central algorithm that's in play on the feed. Certainly dwell time is important, but I think when it comes to starting out, it's content is the most important piece, and what will get you to click post, right? And I think a lot of people get intimidated by the fact that, I have to create this LinkedIn post, and it has to be long, and it has to be scholarly, and it has to be professional. And it's like, yes, sure. But you can also just post something. It's like, I had a thought today, and it's something I would be willing to share at work or with colleagues. So I'm going to share it on LinkedIn and see what happens. Right. And people can engage with that thought. And, you don't have, there are plenty of posts that are 1-line posts or 2-line posts that have plenty of distribution and plenty of engagement. So don't worry as much about the length or the LinkedIn algorithm, worry about getting into the consistent habit of posting authentic content, right? Like just put stuff out there, put yourself out there, engage with people, appreciate when people comment, share, back with them, right? And then start to build slowly. And again, that's where the patience component comes in. Like for me, patience and consistency are the two most important pieces.
I was going to ask, because somebody said there in chat, they were talking about which of those 4 items they would put at the top of their list. So that was my question for you. What do you put at the top of your list? Do you think it is the patience and authenticity, or what do you think?
No, I think it's, I mean, they're all so important, but patience and consistency are critical, right? It's almost like you can't have one without the other. Because if you post once and you expect it to take off and then it doesn't, you're like, well, okay. And then you go away for a week or two, you come back and try again. As far as LinkedIn is concerned, like even when I go away for 3 or 4 days, my profile dips, engagement dips. The one thing that's guaranteed is that consistency gets the most credit from LinkedIn, in my opinion, within reason, right? You shouldn't be posting every hour, but you want to be posting a couple times a week consistently and engaging with people's content and your own content, starting a conversation, right? If you can start a conversation, LinkedIn will eventually start to push your content. That is what, in my opinion, I've observed for the last couple months, and that's why polls are so effective, right? I mean, 11% of my content total in the last 2 years has been polls.
Really?
And
wow.
It's yielded 35% of the comments that my
content is this, do you know this because do you use Shield Analytics, or are you tracking this yourself?
I use Shield Analytics,
okay,
which is great, cool. Right? And I think that's the other piece is like, don't worry about Shield for the first year, right? The first year that you're posting for the first time on LinkedIn, like just get in the rhythm of doing it, put content out there, seed the platform, find people to follow, and vice versa. I did actively engage with people and sort of reach out to connect with people. I think that's the other piece. A lot of people are nervous about connecting with people they don't quote unquote know.
Right.
But my counterpoint to that is that prior to working with anybody, you didn't know them either, right? So it took working with somebody at a company to get you to say, oh, I know this person. I'll then allow them to connect with me on LinkedIn. But like, they were all strangers at one point, right?
That's how we get to know them. We interact with them, right?
Exactly. And so here you're just saying, okay, well, there are strangers, there are people that I haven't yet had the chance to meet and work with, but nobody knows what the future holds. So consistency here will bear fruit over time. And so that's why I say patience and consistency are the most important thing. And then don't try and cut any corners. Don't do any hacks. Like I always encourage people to avoid engagement pods. I was going to
say pods, like, I hate pods.
Yeah. I mean, there's no shortcut to building a engaged audience that is long-term, I think, on the platform. People that, you genuinely feel like, if I went anywhere in the world, I probably know somebody from LinkedIn that I can meet up with and have, a beer or coffee with. And like, that's a cool feeling. It's an interesting and fun dynamic.
Yeah. So I pulled another question up, and I was doing the technique that I told you when we first came on. I always tell my guests when we come on, I'm like, look at the camera, don't look down at the comments, because when I'm looking at the screen, you see the engagement's not as good as when I'm looking at the camera. So I pulled a comment up on screen, and then I didn't look down at it. And it's a longer comment. This is like a limitation of StreamYard. I almost wish they would like scrunch the comments down. But we're almost doing the thing on, you remember the TV show Home Improvement where Wilson was like looking over the fence all the time to Tim? It's like when we get a long comment on StreamYard, it's almost that way. And it was like the comment's been blocking us for a little bit, but it was a good question from Bruce. And I want to thank you, Bruce, for asking. And his concern is, LinkedIn is a place for marketers to market and not really a place to establish subject matter expertise other than for people in marketing. What are your thoughts on that, Liam?
My thoughts on that are that everybody's in marketing, right? And in a modern professional era, you can choose to market yourself through your resume only when you're applying for a specific job, or you can choose to consistently market yourself as your personal brand and who you are on the platform. And you never know if that opens doors down the line, right? Because I think that's the thing that I love about LinkedIn the most, is that it allows you to manifest your own serendipity, right? Yeah, I mean, I had not heard of Willow Tree before I moved, and if they hadn't reached out to me, I would never have probably found this opportunity. And this opportunity is something that I'm just absolutely loving right now. And so, I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity if I hadn't put it out there. And I'm not traditionally, I'm an operations professional with a marketing mindset. I'm not a true marketer. So, just I think that's the thing that I would say to that is that everybody has something to put out there that might be valuable to somebody else, and it's potentially doing yourself a disservice if you don't try and put it out there and find people that will benefit from it, who aren't just marketers, right? And I also don't think that marketing yourself is a bad thing. I think it's not a bad word.
Mm-hmm. I think we definitely can market ourselves wherever, whatever industry, whatever career we're in. The chat is just blowing up. I don't think we're gonna be able to get through everything. I'm trying to pull a couple more up on here, but
I don't have a call till 10, so if you want to go for it, you can.
I think we got to most of the questions. I mean, someone did ask a question earlier. I think it was Gabe, and I can't find it, but it was a question about mass tagging, and they wanted to know your thoughts about, doing the mass tagging in posts, Liam. I think I know what your answer is going to be, but what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was actually mass tagged in a post a few weeks ago, by somebody who was asking a poll of what annoys them the most about LinkedIn behaviors. And mass tagging wasn't an option, and I didn't say that there was that was my thing. I don't want to leave a comment that made her or I look bad, but I mentioned it to the person directly in a DM, and I just said, listen, honestly, that what you did was my least favorite thing. I mean, it's nice to be tagged and included, and nice to be thought about, but there's a way to do it without necessarily sort of seeming like you're just doing it to get as many views as you can. The other thing that's important to know for anybody that's thinking about doing that is that if 50% of the people that are tagged in your tag cloud do not respond with a comment, you are likely shooting yourself in the foot, because the algorithm will not distribute the content as wide as it might otherwise. So something to keep in mind. I typically will tag people that I know will be cool with me tagging them, or that I know will be interested in the topic specifically, and will be likely to respond to my tag, right? And that's usually people that I've had conversations with outside of tagging people, and I've actually built relationships with. So you'll rarely see me tag more than a few people. If you're tagging more than 5 people, I would stop and question why you're doing it.
Yeah. It's like a wall of tags, and I like to refer to it as spam tagging. You're doing it for you, not for them.
Right.
If you're tagging, and I wrote a blog about this, Liam, and it's like, thanks for your spam tag. Your post has nothing to do with me. And now I have like a block of copy that's in that blog. If someone spam tags me in a post and has nothing to do with me, in the beginning I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I must be somebody. They're tagging me. And then I was kind of irritated. I'm like, well, they're getting into my feed. And now I'm like, well, if they're going to spam tag me, I'm going to spam them back in comment. And it's not spam necessarily, but I will say, hey, thanks for tagging me, Liam. I invite people reading this to follow my profile on LinkedIn, visit my company page. And by the way, I just published a book. Come and check out my book, and eventually they either get the hint, like, I'm not going to engage, I'm just going to promote, or they don't. And, they give up eventually. But great conversation here today, Liam. I pulled your profile up on screen for folks that are watching us now. Are you open to accepting invitations from people that send you invites to connect here?
Yep, for the most part, definitely.
All right, awesome. So what I recommend is when you invite Liam to connect, definitely mention that you heard him in the live video today. If there's something that resonated with you, refer to that. Just say, hey, I loved your point about authenticity, or I loved your PACE acronym, so he knows you actually watched the interview for today. Somebody asked about my shirt. Yeah, it says, I love, I think it says pumpkin spice is my favorite season.
Nice.
Because I'm a coffee fan. I love the pumpkin spice stuff. So any final comments for us today, Liam, as we think about wrapping up this conversation about being successful on LinkedIn? Any final comments for folks?
I think the final comment that I will say is that if you invest the time and energy and can get around sort of your own inhibitions and a natural instinct to overthink and self-critique everything about what you do, and really just start investing time, sharing your thoughts, your professional thoughts, or just thoughts in general that are something you would say at the office with people, then start posting them on the platform, and just don't worry too much about the responses. Just get into the habit, right? It's like what people say with exercise, which I don't do enough of, but you should just start small and start to build up over time. And anytime you start to think to yourself, oh, this is so frustrating, like I even have to remind myself, pace, 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 pace. And sometimes I still get frustrated, but it is what it is. And the benefits of being open and authentic on this platform far, far outweigh any of the potential challenges that might exist. Now, I say that with a caveat, like make sure your current employer is comfortable with what you're doing and things like that. I'm fortunate to be in a case where I'm encouraged to do that. So, but within reason, once you've checked those boxes, like just get in the habit, just do it. And don't overthink it. Don't delete posts that don't get enough views. Don't think everybody's sitting there like looking at you and thinking, oh, is their post going to do well or not? Right? They're just going to see it and scroll on if they don't want to, and then try again another day and see how it happens. And as long as you're being true to yourself, there's really no shame in any of it.
Great points. Wow, so many nuggets, and even in the last minute, there were so many nuggets in there and gems of wisdom in there, Liam. Thank you so much for joining. Anything else coming up for you that you want to tell us about before we wrap up today?
No, I think we're knee deep in closing out our quarter here at the Willow Tree offices, and so if anybody watching is a technologist and interested in building software applications, custom software applications, native applications for Fortune 100 companies, I would love to chat with you. So feel free to ping me. And other than that, I'll see you on the LinkedIn platform, and I hope that you'll reach out and connect, and we can start sharing each other's content together.
Awesome. Thank you, Liam. And I'm going to just drop a comment below here just to remind you guys, if you have not posted in a long time on LinkedIn, you can share this video along as a LinkedIn post today. And maybe when you share it, tell people something that you learned by watching the video. It's a great way of helping to get, Liam's great advice out there to your network. Counts as your post today on LinkedIn. You don't have to think about what to post. It's kind of demonstrating how you're focused on lifelong learning here. And there were so many great gems in here. Liam, thank you so much. Pleasure chatting with you here today. And
thank you.
It was a delight getting to know you better, and it's a delight seeing your LinkedIn and your career continue to succeed. So thank you again.
Thank you, Brenda. It's been a pleasure. I've absolutely loved it, and thanks to everybody for watching. Really appreciate it.
All right, guys. Well, stay safe and stay healthy, everyone. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see all of you on LinkedIn. And we'll see you on the other side of this. Take care.